question you'd like to ask. I work at Green Cross Vets Campbelltown, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my knowledge with you guys today. So please send through questions. I've already got some already I can see coming through, so make sure you keep it up for the whole time. And we're going to get straight into it with answering some. So one we've already got is a question regarding paralysis ticks and what's our general recommendation. And it's a really well-timed question going into spring and summer at the moment, especially if you're along the coast. So if you live anywhere near the beach or the bush, you need to be really regular with your flea and tick control. So paralysis tick will bite and inject a toxin into your pet, and over a few days will start to cause paralysis, and that can be devastating and deadly, of course. So the best thing you can do is keep up to date with tick prevention. If you've lapsed, or if you do see a tick on your pet, you can remove it. So if you have a tick remover, which is a little device that helps you to get under the body and between the body of the pet and the body of the tick, you can, with a twisting action, remove it out. If not, use some tweezers or something like that, and then get straight to the vet. And I think the biggest tip here is that if you see a tick on your pet and they're not showing signs yet, you should still go down to the vets, because it does take a bit of time, and the best time you can treat for tick paralysis is before we're actually seeing clinical signs, so before the paralysis has set in. So be sure to get down there right away. So what should I do if I see a snake when walking my dog? So be very careful. I'd put this in a very similar category to tick paralysis. Snake envenomation can be lethal. It can cause a number of clinical signs. And so the biggest thing we'll probably see very quickly, from almost straight away to a few hours in some cases, is collapse and difficulty breathing. It can cause breakdown of muscle, breakdown of red blood cells, and various neurological signs. So definitely get down to the vets straight away. But if you do see a snake, be very still. Absolutely do not approach it, and keep your dog calm so they don't approach it as well. And if the snake is quite close, try not to move too much, because remember, they are scared of you more than you are of them. Maybe that part's debatable, but they're definitely scared. So they're not likely to strike unless you're provoking them. And when it is safe to do so, move away. In the case that your dog has been bitten, don't attempt to then collect the snake, even if it's dead, because sometimes they're not actually dead and you put yourself at risk of getting bitten as well. So if it is safe to do so, you can take a photo. Otherwise, keep a mental note and let your vet know what it looks like. And then we can get your dog safely treated. So my pet's never been swimming before. What's the best way to get them comfortable with the water? So swimming it's actually a really good activity, and it can be really good for especially older dogs who have joint issues, where we want regular exercise. We want to get that movement in all the joints to kind of keep mobility going, increase blood flow, and so that they don't get tight, stiff joints. But I guess things to consider are that it may be new to your pet, so introducing them to the water in a shallow environment, maybe not too many waves at first, and somewhere where you can stand and hold them, and being confident that they can swim before you kind of let them go out. So if you've got a pool or anything like that. And I've actually seen some little jackets that are kind of like floating devices that you can put on, or some with a handle that you can kind of help your pet swim, and then just getting them comfortable with it, and soon you'll get a feel for whether they can actually hold themselves up, swim, and if they can, that's a great way to get some exercise in, good for hips and knees, arthritic joints and all that kind of stuff. So definitely encourage it, but keep it safe as well. Alrighty, so I'm going on holidays and have no one to look after my pet. What should I do? So I guess the best thing is, if you know someone that can look after your pet at home, it's the less stressful way to do it, because your pet stays in a familiar environment. Usually that's someone coming in to feed them. Ideally play with them as well, give them some enrichment, because we don't want them feeling alone for a lot of the day and getting bored. I guess second to that would be if you could take your pet to a house that they were familiar with, so some family or friends, and they could stay with them. And lastly, I'd be looking into some pet boarding facilities, and make sure you go have a look at them and make sure you're comfortable with what they're offering in the facilities, and have a good chat to see what you can expect from that. And just a note on that one, making sure they're up to date with vaccinations and their parasite prevention before they go in, so that they're safe and so that they're not a contagious risk to other pets there as well. So another question that we got come in, I'm going traveling with my cat in the next few weeks. Any essentials I need to bring? Cats, I wouldn't say they like to travel as much as dogs. They're not the type to stick their head out a window or be enthusiastic about it. So when traveling with cats, it's really about managing their anxiety. So keeping them in a carrier, definitely don't have them on your lap where they can easily jump and interfere with a driver or race around the car, or definitely not jump out of a window, but keeping them in a secured carrier. I'd recommend covering that with a towel so that they're not getting too much stimulation or any kind of things that can scare them out the window, loud noises. What you can do as well is try things like Feliway. You can spray it onto the towel or onto a blanket in the carrier, and that can help to appease them a little bit and make them feel calm. But if you know that your cat has a serious anxiety disorder associated with traveling, then I would recommend having a chat to your vet about it, because sometimes we can prescribe some medications that can relieve either anxiety associated with a trip in the car, or some animals actually feel car sick. So if there's any kind of motion sickness associated, then we can use some anti-nausea medications to help as well. So we've got another one too. So I've heard heat stress is a problem for pets. Do you have any tips and things I can do to help my pet more comfortable during heat? So that's a really important one, because I guess it's more than comfort, but some cases are really quite dangerous, especially in summer. So I'd recommend, when it comes to walking in spring and summer, keep it to early morning or the afternoon. And then when you do go, especially if you're going in the afternoon and it's been quite a hot day, get you to just check the temperature of the pavement before you take your pet for a walk. Because remember, they don't have shoes on, their pads can get burnt quite badly as well. So I would put the back of your hand onto the pavement, see if you can hold it there for a good 5-10 seconds without getting burnt yourself. And if it's not too hot, then it's usually a safe time to walk. Making sure that there's plenty of rest spots along the way on the walk, shade, water as well. So if you know you're going where there's some water fountains or taps, that's great, but also carry your own water too. And then ensuring that they've got shelter if you're not home. So if you're leaving for the whole day, it's going to be a hot day, they're allowing access to the house, ensuring that they've got plenty of water at home, plenty of shelter too. And then of course, in the case that you do come home to a pet that's really struggling to breathe, collapse, get to the vet straight away, and ensure that you keep them cool in the process. So whether you get a wet towel, pop it on them, have the aircon in the car, give the vet a call to know that you're coming, so that they can be prepared for you, and then they can hopefully get a good start on treating them. So this is a good question. I'm coming up to Christmas time. Is it bad to give my pet leftovers for Christmas lunch? So what I will say is you need to be careful about what you give. There are lots of foods that are safe to feed pets, but a lot of things that we indulge in over Christmas, whether it be sweets or really fatty foods, you need to be careful with. So although they may not be toxic, overeating some fatty foods or even just overeating in general can make your pets feel a little bit sick. So vomiting, diarrhea, and in some cases it can actually lead to a condition called pancreatitis. And what we do know is in dogs it's often set off by really fatty foods, and that can make them quite sick. Sometimes they need to be hospitalized, they need to go on fluids and pain relief, and it can be quite a painful disease. So being judicious with your food choices, hiding things that you know are toxic like chocolates, keeping them away from grapes, garlic, onion and all that kind of thing would be the best way to go. And another one here as well. So we've got, my dog's really scared of the New Year's fireworks. What can I do to help him? If you know your dog's scared of fireworks, the best thing you can do is try to plan ahead. So I guess this comes into fireworks, thunderstorms, any anticipated loud noises. If you can anticipate it, then I'd have a chat with your vet, because often what we do is get some anxiety medications on board so that they can feel calm before the storm or the fireworks set in. And you can try things like thunder jackets that helps to keep them quite secure. They feel that pressure on them. And there's also some things that you can do with behavior training like desensitization. So I'm actually going to introduce you to one of my colleagues now. Her name is Dr. Cynthia, and she works with me at Green Cross Vets Campbelltown. So here she is.
Hi,
welcome to the Q&A. And so we're going to go through some questions together. So we've had some more come through. Thank you guys for sending them in. So it looks like we've got a really good question first up. So is it safe for a puppy to visit the beach? And that's from Emma. So what do you think about the beach and puppies?
So we get that question quite a lot actually, especially in first puppy consults. I generally try to recommend that we get our puppies up to date with their vaccinations and all their parasite preventions on board before we take them to public places. So this includes the beach. Obviously, if we're looking at taking them into a dog beach, then we're going to have a lot of risk for things like worms and ticks and things like
definitely.
that.
So for a puppy in particular, it's usually 3 vaccinations, and so we start at 6 to 8 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, and 14 to 16 weeks, and then making sure that don't take them to the beach right after the last vaccination, but allowing 2 weeks, and that's for the immunity to kick in. But as long as we're sticking with these guidelines, it can be quite enriching to go to the beach. As Cynthia said, if it's a dog beach and they're getting that socialisation as well, they're getting to play in water, but it can also be a minefield for parasites and drinking salt water, which can make them sick, and blue bottles and things like that.
Another thing to sort of be aware of going to the beach is that ticks like coastal areas. So we do see a bit of a spike in paralysis tick during the summertime where, dogs are more likely to go to the beach. So always important to keep up to date with your tick prevention.
Cool, so we've got another question, and this is, Charlie's coat has become lighter. What can I do to stop that? He's gone from rich caramel to a lighter faded version. So I guess the main thing with coat changes is to know when it's a normal transition between coats, so whether we're shedding as we do through the year or if it is a disease process. So if it's kind of generalised and it's happening kind of season to season, it could be just a part of normal shedding. But if we're seeing anything like itchiness, patchy hair loss, any redness, inflammation, then I'd probably be more concerned about that, would you say?
I agree. I would probably also add in that if there's any changes to the skin colour beneath that coat change as well, or, like the nose or anything like that, maybe if you're worried, just go and see your vet.
Absolutely. And they can have all the similar changes that people get. So older animals will start to grey around the face. But we see quite normally that colours can change through the coat, and there's nothing to worry about there. So we'll move on to our next question. So this is from Ellie. What's your best tip for bringing home a new pup this holiday season?
Well, this is a good one. Obviously, you want to make sure that your puppy is feeling safe and looked after when they come to their new home. It's always going to be a bit of a stressful event, changing environments, no matter really how old the dog is. So we always just try our best to sort of relieve some of that anxiety. We can use things like pheromones, so like adaptal collars, or sprays with bandanas on them, giving them toys or anything that might remind them of their old home potentially, if you've got access to that. What else would you...
Yeah, I mean, I get, like, if it's at my house during holiday season, it can be quite loud. So just paying attention to your puppy, and are they really enjoying the stimulation from all these new people? Because if they are, it's a great time to get them used to other people, other animals, again, if they're vaccinated and that kind of thing. But if they're showing signs of anxiety, like they're cowering, they're retreating, they've got the tail between the legs, ears down, I'd be taking that on board and maybe giving them some quiet time away.
Yeah, and that's a good sort of time to start introducing crate training as well. So you can always give them that safe space no matter when sort of in their life. So throughout their whole life, if they're ever feeling unsure, then you could always go back to that crate that you started with.
And start that routine early as well, so that way it's not too hard to keep going. We've got another question. So why does my puppy get anxious around new people and dogs? That's actually a good one to follow up that one there. So I guess they can be normal reactions, can't they? So
anxiety is a normal emotion, as long as it's within context and sort of, I guess, rational in that setting. But there are things that can cause, anxiety can also be a pathological event as well. So it really does depend. It's a very individualised answer. It would be a very individualised answer for this question. So it would very much depend on that particular animal. But normal reasons to be anxious would, I guess, include sometimes loud noises are unexpected, things like that. Going to the vet is always going to be an anxiety-provoking thing. But if your dog is consistently anxious around people and dogs, and it's not sort of within context, then we might have to think about potentially a pathological reason. So probably a good idea to get in contact with your vet, maybe do a behaviour consult and get a nice individualised approach to that
Yeah, it varies so
sometimes,
much.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
so variable.
sometimes we can pinpoint things like triggers that set animals off in particular, and those things are the ones that we can work on mostly.
Yeah,
but
work
we
on
also
avoiding.
need to consider that it could be a bit genetic as well, and like personalities between animals vary. So definitely an individualized approach is the way to go there. Alrighty, how do I teach my older dog to share toys with my new dog? They got jealous pretty fast.
Oh.
That's a good one too.
Yes, I guess it leads on with what we've been talking about, anxieties and behaviours and things like this. This is a very good example of resource-related worries. Some dogs show this as an aggression or an aggressive thing, and others probably show it differently. But I think it's probably quite important to take that resource away in some instances and maybe introduce a toy that is neutral to both dogs, not try and get your older dog to share what's already theirs, I guess.
Teaching an old dog new tricks.
It's possible. It is possible. But yeah, maybe introduce a new toy that both of them sort of don't have any connection with. This is considered sort of a training session, I suppose, and make them short and sweet. If something happens that's good and you want to end it on a high, then do that. Give them treats, lots of positive reinforcement. But if there is a resource aggression related thing, maybe treats isn't such a good idea because you might make everything a little bit worse. But if you're really having a lot of trouble, then getting a good trainer or talking to your vet about it is a good idea as well.
Absolutely.
Delta trained trainers are really, really, really helpful.
Cool. So our next question, what got you into animals?
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one. I guess for me, I'd probably take it back to my childhood pets. That's the earliest memory I have of loving animals, and I did go through various phases. Like I went through a full-on bird phase, and then I had a horse phase, then cats and dogs. But I think I've had dogs, cats, birds, so like chickens, budgies, galahs, fish.
Yeah.
Sea monkeys, but I don't think they count. But I tried that as well. So yeah, just having them, and they are part of the family. And I guess in terms of what wanted me to become a vet, just taking it that extra step is when one of my pets got sick. My cat was attacked by a dog, and I was quite young, and I just saw what the vets did, and actually they saved him. And I thought I'd really love to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that. I'd always wanted to, but that moment really said, all right, you need to do this.
Solidified it for you.
Absolutely. What about you?
I think for me as well, it started off very, very early. I've always had pets. I've never had a period without them. And I did go through a horse phase as well, as your typical young girl in primary school. And one day I just decided I wanted to be a riding instructor, but then I realised I didn't know how to ride, so that sort of didn't work. And then I was like, what can I do that involves everything? So vet it was, and then I'm so glad I made that decision because I don't think I would have made it very far as a riding instructor.
You probably find that most vets say they can't really do anything else, so we're definitely pigeonholing ourselves. So, alrighty. What is the most efficient way to clip my dog's nails? That's a really common question.
Yeah.
It sounds simple, but it can be quite difficult for some people to do. I guess
for some dogs to tolerate.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of actually cutting nails, within the nail there is a part called the quick, and it's pink and it's living, it's fleshy, and if you cut that part it will be sore and bleed. And so if you've got the luxury of a clear white nail, you can see that, and I'd say just clear that by about 1 millimetre.
Yeah.
As long as you're just cutting the white part, then you're all good. But as we know, we've got black nails too. So what's your advice on black nails?
With black nails, I tried to imagine it as if it was white and sort of angle it as if
where it would be.
I guess that comes with experience having to do multiple nail trims a day. So if you're not sure with the black nail, come into the vet. We can always teach you, the girls out the front, and any of the nurses, any of the vets are more than happy to teach you guys how to do it. Cutting the quick does happen, and it happens to the best of us. There are ways to stop that bleeding, and it's always worse, and it always looks worse than it actually is. Doesn't really even tend to bother them all that much. Some animals are very fearful of getting their nails trimmed. In that situation, I would try and minimise that fear by making it a positive experience as much as you can. Again, sometimes you do need to see your vet to get, I think you were talking about anxiolytic medication, so medication that can reduce some of that anxiety and make it a lot easier for your dog
Just
to
keeping
get.
it positive and trying
Yeah.
to reduce stress. We find that when repeated stressful situations happen, it gets harder and harder. So if we can anticipate that, we can make it a lot easier as well. So
Yeah.
So, well, good luck with that. Hopefully those tips help with the nail clips.
Otherwise, we're always
here
there.
to help. That's it. Alrighty. So, is it okay to leave our cat in a cat enclosure when we are not home? So that's from Karen. That's a good question. So I guess ensuring that your cat enclosure is cat safe in terms of not being able to escape, and making sure that there's nothing in there that's dangerous to eat, no kind of electricity cables that if your cat chews, that kind of thing, and ensuring that they've got free access to water, especially food as well, if they're in there for a long time. That would be the main things I'd say.
Yeah, I would probably add in making sure that's secure for your cat not to get out, but other cats or other animals not to get in, because obviously your cat then can't escape that threat. I guess it also depends on whether or not your cat is comfortable in a cat enclosure. Has your cat been in one before? Are they all right in it? Do they have enough shelter? If it's an outdoor enclosure, sort of get away from the heat again, keeping a lot of water available to them. And make sure that they've got enough sort of mental stimulation and enrichment in there to make them have a fun day in it, I guess.
Yeah.
With dogs, you can do things like Kongs. So I guess if you think of a cat version of that, make little ice cubes, make them lick at, and
just something to do all day.
Yeah.
But in saying
cats
that,
do like to rest all day anyway. So.
Yeah, but it is a good way to kind of have that compromise between an outdoor cat, which does have some issues, and having a cat that's safely enclosed but can see outdoors, I guess, and have that stimulation.
Yeah.
So we've got another question. How do I prevent my dog from eating beds and socks? I think we'd be millionaires if we could answer this one.
I know how to fix it once they do. But
Yeah, that's it. So it's really important. Socks can be very dangerous. So they, for whatever reason, are enticing to some dogs, and I would say probably Labradors for me. With
Beagles.
And Beagles.
Yeah.
So if they eat them, the risk is that they cause a obstruction. So whether it stays in the stomach or happens to travel further down and gets into the intestine, it can get stuck, and then that will usually pretty much cause a blockage in the plumbing. The dog is lethargic, won't eat, or if it does, will probably vomit. And then depending on how long that's left in there, it can actually cause some of the gut to die off. So
it can
preventing
be fatal if it's not treated.
I guess don't leave socks lying around if you know your dog is the type to get in there and eat them.
I think in terms of beds, another thing that you can use as well is those like canvas ones, instead of giving them a nice fluffy one. I know that's what we like to do, but if they like to eat it and it's going to, put them at risk, then get one of those canvas ones on the legs.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
and
like
they can be
pallet
good
beds.
because sometimes when they're elevated off the ground, they stay free of like water and things. So that's a good idea. But socks, don't leave them lying around. If they're outside on the line, just make sure they're not falling down where they can get them. But this also applies to things like towels. I've seen dogs really shred up towels and eat those.
Or elastic bands like hair ties.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you know your dog is prone and has a weird kind of interest for these kind of things, just try not to leave them lying around too
kind
much.
of interest.
Absolutely. Cool. So tips to get my dog to lose weight.
Oh yes, we see these quite a lot actually, particularly in sometimes younger dogs that like to eat a lot, but also older dogs that have things like arthritis and things. And losing weight is really one of the best pain relievers. Really, I find that there are weight loss diets, so things like Hill's Metabolic, Royal Canin has some as well, Satiety, but then you can also sort of manage this with whatever you're currently feeding as well, by reducing the caloric intake and increasing the exercise if it's safe to do so.
Yeah. And usually, I guess when I quiz a lot of people about what are you feeding your dog, what we find is that there's the main meals, which are good, nutritious, but we're getting lots of treats as well. And when we put that into context with the size of the dog or the cat and how much they're getting, it can actually be the equivalent to us snacking on burgers and unhealthy foods throughout the day. And so often eliminating or limiting the extra foods can help quite a bit.
Yeah, thinking a lot about caloric content of things as well. So like meats and cheeses and things like that have a lot of calories in them, so they're very calorie dense. I used to teach puppy preschool a long time ago, and I always used to say, for the people that like treating their dogs, you can always use this as training as well. If you're feeding kibble, you can put their amount in a Ziploc bag, as much as they get for the day, use that as treats, and then whatever's left over can be their meal.
And don't listen to them when they beg.
Don't listen to them when they beg.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to do that, and some people had quite a lot of success doing that as well.
So it sounds like by how we've answered this, it's pretty much diet, mostly.
Yeah.
I reckon probably 80%
or
food,
more,
and then the rest is exercise. Same for us. Like you need to make sure that you're eating the right things, and then exercise is that extra bit as well.
A little boost.
I think we've actually run out of time, so that was really good. Thank you so much for sending in all these questions. They've been really good, and I hope you've had some good tips for you. And
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we look forward to doing it again.
Bye.
Bye.